My cousin Frank retired at 56. He lives in a 3-bedroom house he bought in 2009. Drives a Hyundai Tucson with a dent in the rear bumper that he never bothered fixing. His favorite jacket is from Costco. When I asked him over Thanksgiving how much he had saved before he left his engineering job, he told me a number that made me set my fork down. Then he said something I think about almost every day. He said every financial decision I ever made came down to $15,000. If you understand what $15,000 actually means at every stage of your life, you will build wealth whether you want to or not. I thought he was oversimplifying. Then he walked me through it, and I realized that this one number shows up at every critical financial turning point, and almost nobody talks about it that way. My name is Ivan. I reached financial independence not by being brilliant, but by finally listening to people like Frank who had already done it. What I am about to show you is a framework built around a single dollar amount that changed how I think about every financial decision I make. Let me start with the one that most people get wrong from the beginning. Habit 1. Keep $15,000 in cash at all times. You have heard the advice about building an emergency fund. Every financial voice on the internet tells you to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. That is a fine idea in theory, but it is terrible as a starting point because most people hear 3 to 6 months, calculate a number that feels impossibly large, and then save nothing at all. Frank told me to forget the months and forget the percentages. Just get to $15,000 in cash. Not invested, not locked in a retirement account, cash, sitting in a high-yield savings account doing absolutely nothing exciting. And here is why that specific number matters. $15,000 covers roughly 2.5 months of expenses for the median American household. But more importantly, it is the threshold where what economists call the poverty premium disappears almost entirely. Below $15,000 in liquid cash, you're paying an invisible tax on being financially fragile. Your car makes a grinding noise and you ignore it because you cannot afford the $400 diagnostic. So 3 months later, it becomes a $2,000 transmission repair. Your tooth hurts and you skip the dentist because the copay feels steep. 11 months later, you are in an emergency room with an infection and a bill that could have been avoided entirely. You buy the cheapest tires because that is all you can swing, and they wear out in 18 months instead of 4 years. You end up spending more on tires over a decade than someone who bought the better ones once. According to a recent Empower study, the median emergency savings balance for Americans is $500. $500. And a Bankrate survey from late 2025 found that nearly 1 in 4 Americans have no emergency savings at all. Meanwhile, 43% cannot cover a $1,000 emergency from savings. $15,000 in cash eliminates the cascade of bad decisions that come from operating without a floor. It is the number where you stop making desperate financial choices and start making strategic ones. There is real math behind this. Say you are someone without this buffer, and over the course of 4 years, you get hit with the normal things life throws at everybody. A car repair you cannot afford turns a $500 fix into $2,000 because you delayed it until the engine was compromised. A medical bill you could not pay on time gets sent to collections and wrecks your credit score, which means higher interest rates on everything else you borrow for the next 7 years. You finance a new laptop because yours died and you need it for work, paying $1,600 over 24 months for a machine that costs $1,000 in cash. You pay for convenience constantly. The closer grocery store with higher prices because you cannot afford the gas to drive to the cheaper one across town. The overdraft fees because your checking account runs on fumes. The late payment penalties because you are juggling which bill to pay first. Add it all up, and the cost of not having $15,000 in cash over 4 years is somewhere between $8,000 and $14,000. You are literally spending thousands of dollars for the privilege of being financially fragile. Rich Richard keeps exactly $15,000 in a separate high-yield savings account he never touches unless something genuinely qualifies as an emergency. He has clear rules for what counts: job loss, medical emergency, critical home, or car repair. Everything else gets solved from his regular cash flow. Poor Peter has about $800 in checking and nothing in savings. When his water heater died last February, he put the replacement on a credit card at 22% interest. That $1,200 repair is going to cost him over $1,900 by the time he pays it off. And because his credit score took a hit from a collections account the year before, the interest rate on that card was higher than it would have been otherwise. One problem compounds into the next. The water heater was not the real problem. The lack of a cash floor was the real problem. The water heater just exposed it. Frank called $15,000 the foundation. He said you do not build a house starting with the roof. You pour the concrete first. 15,000 is the concrete. Everything else is the house you get to build on top of it. Habit 2. Invest a minimum of $15,000 per year. That is $1,250 a month. And before you tell me that sounds aggressive, let me show you why this specific number is the floor, not the ceiling. $15,000 a year invested consistently for 25 years at the historical average stock market. Return of roughly 10% becomes approximately $1,475,000. You put in $375,000 of your own money over those 25 years. The market adds over $1,100,000 on top of that. That is compounding doing the heavy lifting. Now here is the part that matters practically. $1,475,000 using the 4% withdrawal rule generates roughly $59,000 a year in retirement income. Add that to Social Security, and for most Americans, that is not just a livable retirement. It is a comfortable one. Now compare that to someone investing $7,000 a year. Same 25 years, same returns. They end up with about $688,000, which generates about $27,500 annually in retirement income. That is barely above the poverty line for a couple. The gap between investing $7,000 and $15,000 per year, roughly $500 a month difference, is the gap between a retirement where you have options and one where you're counting every dollar until you die. My neighbor David actually frames this more directly. He says $15,000 a year is the price of freedom. Below that, you are gambling with your future. Above it, you are buying certainty. He invests significantly more than $15,000, but he always says the first $15,000 matters more than the next $50,000, because the first $15,000 is the difference between nothing and something. Everything after that is the difference between something and more. Those are psychologically and mathematically different problems. If you are thinking you cannot find $1,250 a month, I want to challenge that directly. The average new car payment in America right now is $767 a month. The average American household spends over $350 a month on subscriptions and services they use inconsistently or have forgotten about entirely. That is over $1,100 a month going toward things that are building someone else's wealth instead of yours. The $15,000 investment floor is not about earning more. It is about redirecting what you already earn toward the only account that is actually working for your future. Habit 3. Never spend more than $15,000 on a car until your invested assets exceed $250,000. When Frank told me this rule, I was driving a $41,000 SUV that I had financed for 72 months. My invested assets at the time were about $28,000. I had a car worth almost 1.5 times my entire investment portfolio. Frank did not lecture me. He just asked one question. If your car and your investment switched places right now, if you had $41,000 invested and drove a $28,000 car, which version of you would be richer in 10 years? I did not need a calculator. The answer was obvious. Here is the math. The difference between a $15,000 car and a $40,000 car is $25,000. If you take that $25,000 and invest it in a broad market index fund returning an average of 10% annually, in 20 years that single decision is worth approximately $168,000. Not $25,000, $168,000, because the money you did not spend on the car compounds for 2 decades while the car itself is worth nothing. Both the $15,000 Camry and the $40,000 SUV end up in the same place 20 years from now. The junkyard, the only difference is what happened to the gap between them. I sold my SUV 3 months after that conversation, bought a 2014 Toyota Corolla with 72,000 miles for about $8,000. My wife looked at me like I had lost my mind. She came around when I showed her what the difference would look like in our brokerage account by the time our son graduated high school. And I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking that buying a cheaper car means buying a reliability problem. Breakdowns, repair bills, unreliable transportation. I thought the same thing, but consumer reliability data does not support it. A 5 to 8 year old Honda, Toyota, or Mazda with under 100,000 miles is statistically more reliable than a brand new vehicle from most American and European manufacturers. You are not buying a worse car. You are buying a car that someone else already absorbed the depreciation hit on. New cars lose roughly 20% of their value the day you drive off the lot and about 60% within the first 5 years. When you buy a $15,000 car that was originally $40,000, You are buying a machine that has already done most of its losing. The first owner absorbed the steepest depreciation curve, so you do not have to. The mechanical risk is minimal. The financial risk of financing $40,000 into a depreciating asset versus paying cash for $15,000 is the difference between building wealth and treading water for half a decade. Habit 4. If your monthly spending exceeds $15,000, you need $4.5 million to retire. Let me say that again because I need it to register. $15,000 a month in spending means you need $4,500,000 in invested assets before you can stop working. That is the 4% rule applied in reverse. Your annual spending at that level is $180,000. Multiply by 25, $4.5 million. Almost nobody ever runs this calculation. They think about retirement in terms of income replacement, like, I need to replace 80% of my salary. That framing hides the real number. Your salary is not what you need to replace, your spending is. And most Americans, as their income rises, let their spending rise right alongside it without ever calculating what that spending level actually demands in retirement savings. I had a colleague named James who earned $190,000 a year. Top tier income. James spent about $12,000 a month. Nice house in a well-ranked school district, 2 newer vehicles, a family vacation every summer, a couple of weekend getaways. Nothing outrageous, nothing flashy. It just added up. At $12,000 a month, James needed $3,600,000 to retire. He was 44 with about $380,000 in his 401k. To hit $3.6 million by 65, he would need to invest roughly $40,000 a year for 21 years at 10% average returns. That is over $3,300 a month on top of his $12,000 in spending on a post-tax monthly income of about $11,500. The math did not work. His lifestyle had quietly priced him out of retirement. Compare that to someone spending $6,000 a month. They need $1,800,000. At $5,000 a month, $1.5 million. Every $1,000 per month in spending requires an additional $300,000 in retirement savings. That is not a rounding error. That is a $300,000 decision hiding inside a streaming upgrade, a car lease, or a slightly bigger apartment. The truly dangerous part is how gradually people cross the $15,000 line. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to spend $15,000 a month. It happens in increments so small you never notice. You move to a nicer neighborhood, $400 more a month. You upgrade your car, $300 more in payments. You start ordering meal delivery because your schedule is insane, $200 a month. The kids start club sports, $300 a month in fees, travel, and gear. You add the premium gym, the better phone plan, the cleaning service. Each one in isolation is completely reasonable. Combined, they have pushed you across a threshold that now requires multi-millionaire level savings to sustain. And you crossed it without ever realizing you were making a multi-millionaire level financial commitment. That is the nature of lifestyle inflation. It does not feel like a decision. It feels like a natural progression. You earned more, so you spent more. Everybody around you was spending at the same level, so it felt normal. But normal is not the same as sustainable. Normal is what everybody does. Sustainable is what the math actually supports. And those two things almost never overlap when it comes to household spending. Frank kept his monthly spending under $6,000 even when his income was well over $150,000 a year. Not because he was cheap or because he enjoyed deprivation, because he understood that every dollar of monthly spending is a soldier you have to feed for the rest of your life. And he wanted a small, efficient operation, not a sprawling empire that required constant reinforcement just to stay alive. If you are getting value from this, take a second and subscribe. I break down the psychology behind money and wealth building every week. No hype, no fluff, just the actual mechanics that work. Hit subscribe and we will keep going. Habit 5. Run a $15,000 income gap audit every year. This is the one Frank taught me that I had never heard anywhere else. And it might be the most practical habit on this list. Here is how it works. Take your gross household income, subtract your taxes, subtract your total annual spending, subtract your total annual investing. Whatever is left is your gap. For most households, that gap is somewhere between $5,000 and $25,000 a year. It is money that technically came in, but nobody can account for where it went. It evaporated into convenience purchases, impulse buys, forgotten subscriptions, fees you did not notice, and financial friction you have never measured. Frank told me that when he first did this exercise, his gap was $19,000. $19,000 a year that he earned, paid taxes on, and then watched dissolve into nothing productive. He could not point to a single memorable experience or meaningful purchase that the money went toward. It just disappeared. He committed to closing that gap to under $3,000 within 2 years. He did it in 14 months, and the method was simple. He did not create a complicated budget. He did not track every coffee. He just asked one question about every recurring expense and every purchase over $50. Is this worth more to me than what $15,000 invested would become in 20 years? At 10% average returns, $15,000 invested today becomes approximately $100,000 in 20 years. So every time he was about to spend $15,000 on something, he was really asking himself whether that thing was worth $100,000 to his future self. Most of the time the answer was no. Not because the thing was bad, but because the future value made the present cost feel different. Rich Richard does this audit every December. He pulls 12 months of bank and credit card statements, adds up every dollar that came in after taxes, subtracts what he saved and invested, subtracts his known fixed expenses, and whatever remains is the gap. Last year, his gap was $1,400. He considers anything under $2,000 acceptable. That is financial awareness operating at a high level. Poor Peter has never done this exercise. If he did, he would find that somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000 per year flows through his hands without leaving anything behind. Convenience fees, impulse purchases, subscriptions he signed up for during a free trial and forgot to cancel, delivery markups, extended warranties that expire unused, the financial friction of living on autopilot. If you have never done this audit, do it this weekend. Pull your last 12 months of bank and credit card statements. Add up every dollar that came in after taxes. Subtract what you saved and invested. Subtract your known fixed expenses. The number that remains is your gap, and I promise you it will be larger than you think. The gap is not evidence that you are bad with money. It is evidence that money flows toward the path of least resistance unless you deliberately build walls around it and redirect it somewhere productive. Habit 6. Before any major lifestyle upgrade, save $15,000 at the new spending level first. Frank called this the pressure test, and the logic is simple. Say you are considering moving to a nicer apartment that costs $600 more per month. Before you sign the lease, keep living in your current place and transfer that extra $600 every month into a separate savings account. If you can do that for 25 months, which gets you to $15,000, you have proven two things. First, you can actually afford the upgrade without sacrificing your savings and investing rate. Second, you have built a dedicated buffer for the new expense, so if something goes sideways in the first year, you are not scrambling. If you cannot save that $600 a month for 25 months while still hitting your investment floor, the lifestyle upgrade is going to fracture your financial system. You just got the answer before it cost you anything. This rule killed 4 bad decisions for me personally. I was going to upgrade to a premium family phone plan. $60 more a month. Tried saving that separately and realized it made other things noticeably tighter. Kept a cheaper plan. I was going to lease a newer car when my old one was paid off. Tried banking the equivalent lease payment for 3 months and watched my investment contribution slow down. Kept the old car. My wife and I were looking at a bigger house, $900 more per month in mortgage payments. We ran the pressure test for 5 months and both agreed it made our financial life feel fragile in a way neither of us was comfortable with. We stayed put. I was about to sign up for a private gym membership, $140 a month. The pressure test showed that even this small amount, combined with everything else, pushed me below my $15,000 annual investment floor. I found a gym for $40 a month instead. And honestly, the equipment was nearly identical. Each of those decisions individually seemed affordable in the moment. The pressure test revealed that affordable and smart are not the same word. Affordable means you can make the payment. Smart means you can make the payment and still build wealth at the same pace. The $15,000 pressure test is the difference between those two words. Habit 7. Track your net worth against a $15,000 annual growth minimum. This is the habit that ties everything together, and it is the one Rich Richard does religiously that poor Peter never does at all. Once a year, sit down and calculate your net worth. Every asset minus every liability. Then compare it to where you were 12 months ago. If the number has not increased by at least $15,000, something in your financial system is broken and you need to find it. $15,000 in annual net worth growth is not an ambitious target. For someone following the other 6 habits on this list, it should be the minimum. Your investments alone at $15,000 per year contributed will account for most of it. Debt paydown adds more. Home equity appreciation, if you own, adds more on top of that. Rich Richard has tracked his net worth on the first Saturday of every January for 11 years straight. He uses a simple spreadsheet. 3 columns: assets, liabilities, net worth. Every single year, his net worth has increased by at least $15,000. Some years, significantly more when the market cooperated. But even in down years, his contributions and debt paydown kept the floor in place. Poor Peter has never calculated his net worth. Not once. He has a vague sense that he is doing okay because he can pay his bills every month. But paying your bills is not the same as building wealth. Paying your bills means you are surviving. Growing your net worth means you are building something that eventually pays your bills for you. The reason this habit matters is accountability. Without a number, you have no way to know if your financial life is actually progressing or just spinning in place. And most people are spinning. They earn more every year. They spend more every year. Their savings stay roughly the same. Their debt shifts forms but never really shrinks. And decade after decade, they trade time for money without the money ever accumulating into anything that could give them their time back. The $15,000 annual checkpoint catches drift before it becomes permanent. If you hit it, you are on track. If you miss it, you diagnose why, fix it, and protect the next 12 months. Frank told me that the first year he tracked his net worth, the number was negative. He owed more than he owned, but that was also the year everything changed, because once he could see the number, he could not unsee it. It stopped being an abstract concept and became a scoreboard. And something in his psychology shifted when he realized that every single financial decision either moved that number up or pushed it down. Not in theory, in reality. On a spreadsheet he looked at every January, by year 3, his net worth was positive. By year 8, it was over $200,000. By year 14, it crossed a threshold where the growth started to feel automatic. The investments were generating more in annual returns than he was contributing in new money. That is the moment compounding becomes visible, and you only get there by tracking the number relentlessly enough to protect the system that produces it. 7 habits. 1 number. 15,000 as a cash reserve breaks the poverty premium and ends the cycle of desperate financial decisions. 15,000 per year invested is the floor for a retirement that actually provides freedom, not just survival. 15,000 as a car ceiling protects your most valuable compounding years from being drained into a depreciating asset. 15,000 per month in spending is the ceiling before retirement math turns impossible for everyone except the already wealthy. 15,000 as an income gap audit reveals the money you are already earning but unconsciously losing. 15,000 saved at a new spending level is the pressure test that separates a smart upgrade from a financial trap. And 15,000 in annual net worth growth is the minimum checkpoint that tells you whether your financial life is actually moving forward or just running in place. Frank is 63 now, still drives that Tucson, still wears the Costco jacket. He spent last spring hiking in New Zealand with his wife for 5 weeks because he could, because nothing in his financial life requires him to be anywhere on Monday morning. He told me once that wealthy people do not have a complicated system. They have a simple system they never violate. $15,000 is the simplest system I have ever found. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 habits hit you the hardest. I read every single one.